Hello guys, I'm back from another video, and today we're talking about what if Deku never got one for all. So in the last video we talked about how, after a bit of running away from Mirko, which Mirko is apparently the representative of the archer class, aka Oda Nobunaga, he would basically be courted by her as she would start to get a little bit, seductive, let's just say that. And after noticing her beautiful, almost blood-red eyes, they would almost start to, get a little bit, under their pants, let's just say that. But thankfully, or unfortunately, a certain girl, aka, Leonardo da Vinci, aka Mei Hatsumi, would arrive to basically stop this, basically cock-blocking him. So, after saying to both of them that it's finally time for them to basically leave, they would leave on top of her, new creation, aka the Metal Gear Rex copy, which has wings for some reason. So, they would start to fly to go to, to the Hero Commission's office, which they would basically drop off there as they basically started their assault, basically killing the guards and the guards inside, as they would see that apparently they escaped thanks to a secret tunnel that they found under a carpet. So, after basically going into the large tunnel, they would see the Hero Commission basically trying to escape. So, thanks to Nero Claudius, aka Mount Lady, basically using her noble phantasm, aka she would say Louis St. Claudius, which was her noble phantasm, which allows her to basically shoot out. Instead of blue, red, or just regular old flames, she would shoot out silver flames with accompanying, somehow, white rose petals, which somehow didn't get burned. So, after some of them getting killed, specifically some of the guards and also some of the Hero Commission members, the Hero Commission's president would basically be alive. Until, well, Izuku came into the picture, which Izuku would basically murder her in cold blood, which Izuku would be glad to do, basically killing her in the most brutal way imaginable, and basically pissing on her corpse. After the Hero Commission's, and also the, Hero Commission's death, they also showed off in the news that apparently the Hero Commission was not really good at all. Apparently, they did some horrible things like human experimentation and also the propaganda that all quirkless people are weak. And let's just say the heroes are not even being liked anymore at this point. Like, they're barely even scraping by anymore. And thanks to the hero schools being targeted by some of the League of Villains, it's not even helping as well. And thanks to, Izuku giving, well, Jack the Ripper the USB of Bakugo's, misdeeds over the years, let's just say Bakugo was expelled from UA. Which, for some reason, is because of, popularity issues and also for their own sakes. They're basically saving their own asses at this point. So, after Bakugo basically left and also his friends basically banning him for basically doing those things to quirkless people and also many other people that he considers weak, Bakugo would basically leave knowing that he's never going to become a hero. And when his parents basically saw him, let's just say, oh boy, Mitsuki's pretty much pissed after knowing that, Inko's son is basically quote-unquote dead, and after knowing that her son is basically the reason why his, her best friend's son is basically dead, let's just say she no longer considers him as her own, flesh and blood. So, Bakugo is currently believing himself as, the victim, as Izuku would basically arrive to basically finish his end of the deal. What do I mean by this? Well, basically killing him. So, after Izuku basically kills him in the most brutal way imaginable, which thanks to some, sound-destroying runes, or should I say sound-suppressing runes, and some, strength-enhancing runes, which basically allowed them to basically cause some powerful attacks, which, that literally doesn't really do any damage to the actual, building, but it does do damage to the person that basically is the target. In this case, Bakugo, and as for the, the gigantic-ass screams that he's basically emitting out, that basically is happening thanks to Izuku basically impaling his spear into his stomach or something like that, thanks to the runes that basically like suppress the sounds of like screams and many things like that, well, it doesn't even matter. So even though Baku's screaming, nobody's going to hear him. So after Izuku basically kills him for his first revenge done, Izuku would start to leave as he would think of his next plan of attack. Basically killing All Might. And he will do it no matter what. And he will kill him if it means necessary. So, that is basically what happens. This is basically what happened last episode. And so, let's talk about what happens next. So, we go to a different perspective. In this case, a news report, which apparently Bakugo Katsuki was basically killed in his own house. And apparently, his family was not even caring about him at this point. After knowing that, their own son basically killed their best friend's son, oh boy, they no longer even cared. And not only that, Baku was killed mysteriously, and they didn't even hear any screams. The body that was left, let's just say it's not even a body anymore. It's more like a mass of flesh and somewhat bones. I mean, what do I mean by this? What do I mean by this? Well, let's just say the bones were basically crushed to a fine dust. Thanks to Izuku's, Guy Bolga. So, Izuku's basically watching this in glee with the rest of the, representatives for each of the 7 classes. As Oda Nobunaga would say this, that brat got what he deserved. Right, Izuku? As Izuku would say this, yeah, I do agree, but I wanted to do much more with him. Maybe even, I don't know, maybe severing his arms. As one of them would say this, being, Mount Lady. Oof, that's a bit cruel. As he would say this, well, after all, I did got bullied by him, so I guess it makes sense to maybe even, maybe even disable his quirk or something like that. As a certain girl right beside him, specifically, Mei Hatsume is basically sitting on his lap, Izuku would basically start to blush knowing that, she is basically sitting on his lap, because after meeting her for the first time, and also getting to know her ever since, she was revealed to be the representative for the caster class, he would start to have feelings for her, even though it's kind of minor. She would start to try and, get into his pants sometimes, or at least somewhat sometimes, as both of the girls specifically, oh boy, Mount Lady and Mirako, let's just say they're definitely trying to get into his pants as well, but thanks to, her, aka, specifically her, aka, Mei Hatsume is basically hogging Izuku all by herself. Let's just say both of them are basically getting ready to try and maybe kill her, but they're not actually gonna kill her. I mean, in a metaphorical sense, as in, try and, grab Izuku for themselves, as one of them would say this, being Queen Europa. It seems that you, Izuku, seem to have a harem, perhaps? As Jack the Ripper would say this, yes. I never assumed you to be that type of boy. As Izuku would basically start to blush a little bit, which he's never been blushing ever since, the whole, wait for a second. He's never been blushing like this ever since he was, still, quirkless, or at least somewhat quirkless. What do I mean? That is, well, back before when he got, Cuchulain's powers. As he would say this, what do you mean by that? I don't really have a harem. He would start to stutter a little bit, almost like his regular self, as one of them would say this, being Darius. It seems that my comrade might have, several children in the future. Maybe I might be calling myself uncle very soon. As Izuku would start to blush even more, and also all 3 of the girls would start to blush even more as well. As one of them would say this, being, wait for a second, as Jack the Ripper would say this, alright, I think it's enough talk. I mean, he might get, a little bit, as she would start to point at, Izuku's, lower parts, or his, let's just say his royal jewels, let's just call them, as he would start to blush even more, and he would start to act like his regular old self before he basically met Kukulin, as he would say this, whatever, let's just continue the actual meeting, okay? As a certain, long-tongued Stain over there is basically just like watching this, a little bit proud of himself, saying that he's basically just like a dad, and he's soon gonna be a grandfather, probably. So, the meeting would start, and apparently they're planning on going to kill a certain all-for-one character, as Izuku would say this. So, we're going to be killing the guy that basically has the ability to steal other people's quirks. Well, this is gonna be easy. As one of them would say this, specifically Europa, don't underestimate him, Izuku. I mean, even though he doesn't have the ability to steal our powers, he's certainly quite powerful. I mean, he was able to defeat All Might, or at least somewhat, I heard. As she would basically give out a report about All Might's whereabouts. Apparently, All Might got an injury many years ago by All For One, which, when Izuku heard this, he would start to smile even more sadistically. I mean, compared to Jack the Ripper's, well, it's not even comparing anymore. So, Izuku would say this, so you're saying that All Might is weakened, right? As she would say this, yeah, I heard. As he would say this, well, this is interesting. He would give off even more of a smile. As one of them would say this, being, wait for a second. As Darius would say this, yeah, I'm pretty surprised that All Might has an injury in the first place. But I'm not even surprised. I mean, he is human just like the rest of us. But I do detest him in some ways. As Izuku would say this, oh, pray tell then. As he would say this, when I first met him, I saw him basically beating down this quirkless girl. As Izuku would say this, oh really? As he would say this, yes, and he called it training. A joke. It makes me feel sick that this so-called number one hero is considered as a hero. As he would basically slam his, two axes into the ground, causing a bit of a shake in the, earth, as he would say this, that guy doesn't deserve to be called a hero. I consider him as a monster. As Izuku would say this, calling a kettle black, eh? As he would say this, what do you mean by that? As he would say this, well, you basically are the same. As he would basically explain, you basically have the same strength as him, or in your case, surpassed him, and you're quite strong but unpredictable. As he would say this, not technically. I'm not unpredictable, but he is predictable, as he would basically point at All Might's, direction, or at least a poster of him. As he would say this, I consider him as predictable. He's considered as the greatest hero ever, and quite a typical representation of a hero, but in my eyes, I consider him as a fake, wearing a facade. As Izuku would say this, I do agree. So, is there anything else you want to talk about, Jack? As she would say this, oh yeah, we're gonna be having a rest day, so there's no missions today, so just do whatever the hell you want or whatever. I'm just gonna be doing whatever the hell I want. Mostly going into the shops, basically, maybe doing shopping or something. As Izuku would say this, I see. Guess I'll go back to training. As all of them would basically say goodbye. As Izuku would start to leave with Stain. So, after leaving, Izuku would go back to his, apartment as he would basically fall asleep. So, the next day comes as Izuku would wake up early to go exercise once again. Basically training on his stamina, basically running, doing some laps. and somehow basically, how do I say this? Carrying a large freaking boulder on his back while basically trying to run away from a pack of bears. I'm not even kidding. He was trying to run away from a bear, and he's doing that while exercising in the freaking woods. So, after a while of exercising, Izuku would start to go back to his apartment as he would grab some water. He created a little teleportation network which connects to the meeting place all the way to the mountains where he basically trains and to his apartment. He would use teleportation stones or runes to basically go from point A to point B to point C. So, after he teleports back to his apartment, he would basically grabs a glass of water as he would basically go to drink. He was also shirtless at the time as he would get a knocking at his door. Izuku would basically go towards his door as he would open it, seeing that all three of the girls, specifically Mei Hatsumi, not Oda Nobunaga, but I mean technically because she is the successor, but more or less this is Mirko, and finally Mount Lady are basically there in his door. As Izuku would say this, what do you want? I'm currently busy with training right now. As Izuku would see that all three of them are basically nosebleeding right now. Some of them having blushing faces, like completely like a dust of red, basically just like poofed on their face. And one of them, specifically Mount Lady, is basically just like drooling over his, glistening abs, which is still pretty much drenched in sweat. And for, Mei Hatsume, oh boy, let's just say she is currently about to faint as Izuku would basically catch her. After catching her, both girls, specifically Mirko and Mount Lady, would start to get jealous, as Izuku would basically bring her onto his little couch, as he would basically sit on his bed, which he would basically just tell both of them to basically come into his house or room or whatever, or his apartment or whatever, as all three of them would basically go inside, as Izuku would say this. So, what do you want? As one of them would say this, specifically Mirko. So, Izuku, do you want to... As Izuku would say this. Yeah? As one of them would say this, being, Mount Lady. Well, as both of them, because, Mei Hatsumi is currently just, knocked out. Well, Mirko would say this. Would you like to date us? After Izuku heard that, he would basically blink several times as he would say this. What? As all three of them, not technically, I mean all two of them, because, Mei Hatsume currently knocked out, blah, 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 blah. And for, Mount Lady, she would say this. Yeah, we want to have a date with you. I mean, we need to wait until Mei Hatsume is finally woken up, but still, as Izuku would say this. Why do you want to ask that? As she would say this, being, Mirko. Well, after my first date with you and after that little kiss, well, we decided to maybe share you. As Izuku would say this. What do you mean by share? As all, the both of them would basically start to lick their lips. As Izuku would basically recognize this as a sign of a girl basically trying to mark their territory. As Izuku would say this to himself. Oh god. As you would remember, this one flashback back when he was, basically training with Kukulin. So, Kukulin is basically telling him how to basically try and use his sword form of his, Guy Bolga, as he's currently trying to fight, Skahak. As Skahak and, Kukulin basically told him a story, where before, back in his day, when he was still a rookie, he would remember that he was basically being beaten down by Skahak for thinking that she is basically weak just because she was a girl. And oh boy, let's just say after those, few words, let's just say his ass was grass and it was about to get mowed by Skahak. So, after being beaten to the ground several times by Skahawk over the years, he would actually recognize if a girl is basically super powerful enough to basically beat him, or weak enough that he's able to basically subdue them. And not only that, he would also learn about some secrets about women, more specifically about marking their territories, especially with Skahawk. Apparently, she had a husband at one point, which, after he died during, old age and such, and because she was just like, pretty much a goddess at this point, well, let's just say she sort of had this, nagging feeling in her mind. And when Cuchulainn came around, oh boy, let's just say that teacher and student relationship became something much more. Let's just say that. And so, let's just say, oh boy, Izuku can recognize if a girl is basically just getting ready to either, try and eat him or try and, kill him. Take a guess what the eating part means. So, Izuku would basically start to get a little bit nervous, as Izuku would see in one of the purses of, of one of the girls, specifically, Mei Hatsume. Well, Mei Hatsume seems to be, carrying rope. Izuku would basically gulp, as he would start to run away, as somehow, well, wait for a second, somehow Mei Hatsume would basically wake up, as he would be captured by her, thanks to her large, almost octopus, Dr. Octopus-like tentacles with, the hands installed. What do I mean by this? Well, instead of, actually having, claws instead of, instead of, claws, just Dr. Octopus, they're basically just, gigantic ass paws, which, after Izuku got captured, he would be tied down, and when he tried to get out of this, situation, it turns out, well, they're mana destroying, or should I say mana, wait for a second, mana disabling rope, which is basically similar to, quirk canceling tape. But except it's for heroic spirits, or those that are basically like mages. Izuku would be terrified knowing what they're about to do. Mei Hatsume would start to take off her clothes, including Mirko and Mount Lady, as, I'm not going to do the whole details about it, because, oh boy, let's just say some of my, some people that I know are probably watching this, and I don't want them to, think of me in the wrong way, so let's just say, they had a good night. Mostly the girls, and as for Izuku, let's just say he suffered a lot. Mostly in the groin area, let's just say that. So, after that day, it would be morning, as Izuku would basically be like, wait for a second, he literally looks like Nagato from from Naruto, but except, without the large ass, beams of, black sticks or whatever they're called, up on his back. He basically looks like a fucking skeleton at this point, basically saying to himself, my pelvis, it hurts. He doesn't know pain. Even though it was pleasurable at, for the first time, at the midpoint, it would start to become painful, as his, loin fruit over there down below, oh boy, it's starting to become a little bit run. And let's just say Izuku is currently in constant pain. So, after the three girls woke up, which currently they're just wearing their underwear, let's just say one of them would say this. One of them would say this, specifically, Mei Hatsume. She would say, morning. Oh, hey, Izuku. Wait, Izuku? As she would see that Izuku is currently drained of life. As she would say this. Oh no. As she would basically start apologizing, she would start to apologize to him, saying that she was sorry for basically causing causing a little bit of trouble for him. And as for the other girls, specifically, Mount Lady and, wait for a second, Mirko and finally Mount Lady basically just wake up and notice that Izuku is basically drained of life. They would basically start to make breakfast, as Izuku would be back to full energy. as all of the girls would see that he somehow basically survived the whole, to the whole, like, life-draining process, let's just say that. As Mirko would basically slap him on the back, as she would say this: "I never felt pleasure anything like that before, but damn, I would gladly do that all over again." As Izuku would start to flinch, knowing that if she does, well, he is about to basically go to heaven, but not in that heaven, as in, going up above and basically just, like, going with the rest of his, fellow quirkless people right there. Oh boy. As Izuku is basically saying to himself, "Please don't." As Mount Lady would say this: "Yeah, I never knew that you were actually able to basically move like that." As Izuku would start to blush a little bit like his old self, as he would say this: "Please don't say it like that." As Mirko would basically start to laugh a little bit, as Mei Hatsume would say this: "So, guys, what time are we planning on going to the meeting?" As Izuku would say this, as he would basically go onto his phone, as he would see that there's a message on his phone about Jack the Ripper. Apparently Jack is telling them to go on, onto their next meeting, maybe next week. After knowing this, Izuku would say this: "We're gonna go into another meeting next week, so unfortunately we're gonna be, just doing some training or something like that." As Mirko would say this: "Well, that would be fun, but I think it's better to do some other types of training." As she would grab something from her, bag, as Izuku would see something that looks somewhat phallic and seems to be, how do I say this? Seems to be a switch on it. And take a guess what it is. Go into the comments and take a guess what it is. As Izuku would start to try and run away, but unfortunately, Mei Hatsume basically grabs her, tentacle, or her, like, tentacle, or whatever you want to fucking call it. Those extra arms basically just, like, come out of her, out of her back. Almost like Dr. Octopus style, god damn it. As Izuku would be grabbed and brought to the bed once again. As all three of the girls would say this: "Are you prepared, darling?" They would basically give off this sadistic smile, including Mei Hatsume, which Izuku was surprised about, but unfortunately he's literally screaming like a girl, and nobody's even hearing his screams thanks to, noise cancelling runes. So unfortunately, he's about to suffer in a world of pain / pleasure. So yeah, this is probably gonna be the end of this episode. So yeah, I hope you liked the video, comment and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye bye.